Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Ciel DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Ruti Wajnberg. Ruti is a Brooklyn-based upholsteress and the founder of Find the Thread Upholstery. Known for her bold use of color and pattern, she helps clients fall back in love with the furniture they already own. She transforms pieces in a way that feels joyful and personal. Her process is designed to be approachable and low stress while keeping quality furniture out of the landfill through thoughtful, design-forward restoration. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Ruti today. I had a great time talking with her and getting to know her, and I'm really excited for her to be a first-time teacher at the Custom Workroom Conference later this year. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Ruti, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I'm really grateful for your time today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, I've been watching you for a little bit, and I know that you are going to be a teacher at the Custom Workroom Conference later this year in Erie, Pennsylvania. So why don't we have you introduce yourself to people who may not know who you are and a little bit about who you are, where in the world you are, and then we'll get into what your business is.
Okay, great. My name is Ruti Wajnberg. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and my upholstery shop is called Find the Thread. I specialize in heirlooms, thrift finds, street treasures, things that tend to hold history and meaning for people. And I try to guide folks through every step of the process, making it fun and easy and ideally pretty stress-free.
Okay. I love that. Holding history. That is such a beautiful thought about the pieces that we have in our home and that we live with every day.
Yeah. And a lot of people have things that they've inherited. And what I found over the years of working with those pieces is that for people who have something that belonged to someone that was meaningful to them, whether it's a grandparent or a friend who gave it to them, having something like that in their home really makes them feel closer to that person.
Right.
So I consider it really an honor to be able to help them continue that relationship.
Oh, I love that. So tell me a little bit about how you got started and how you developed your skills.
For sure. So I worked in tech for a very long time. I've listened to your podcast long enough to know that many of us are on our second life, right? And found this craft. So I was a product manager first, which is basically someone who's puppet mastering software developers and deciding what they're going to build in what order. And after a few years of that, I got kind of frustrated that I couldn't do the thing and could only sort of help people figure out what they were going to do. Right. So I decided to become a software developer, and I went to one of those. I don't think they are around anymore, but there used to be like engineering boot camps that you would go to and study intensively for a few months, and then they would help you find your first job. So I did that, and I became a software developer. And I did that for a number of years, which honestly I loved. Mm-hmm. And my job was to go into small startups in New York City when they were having some sort of cultural shift or tumult of some kind. And so I was like part software developer and part like morale booster. It was a very good fit for me. But somewhere along that journey, I had a boring job where a startup that I was working for got purchased. I had to go work for this large corporation, and I was bored. And I decided to find a creative outlet, and I found an ottoman making class that used to exist in New York City. Unfortunately, the teacher left the city, so that class doesn't exist anymore. And we made an ottoman from scratch. We made the frame.
Okay.
We put webbing on it. We padded it up. We made the cover, and I loved it. I didn't anticipate loving it, but I totally caught the bug. Mm-hmm. And for a good decade after that, upholstery became a hobby. Okay. I took a few remote classes. My first one was with Shelley Lear. I joined like a Facebook group of people who were interested, and she would teach these remote lessons, and I would watch them on my own time. I started taking everything I could find off the street and taking it apart and just learning more and more about furniture. And then I got a little more serious, and I flew to Minnesota a few times to take Cynthia Blaskachik's classes with the funky little chair. Mm-hmm. But honestly, along that whole decade-long journey, it had never really occurred to me that I could be an upholsterer for my job. My parents immigrated to the United States. I was very much raised with the idea that you have a few practical options for what your career will
Right.
be. And so I thought it was a hobby, but it was a hobby that was starting to sort of be an important part of my life.
Okay.
And then the pandemic happened. I had just had my second baby. He was like a
Okay.
month old. And I ended up not working for almost a year, taking care of my kids full time. And then when I did go back to work, it was a really different job. It was like in my bedroom with my husband, and the kids were in the living room screaming. And it wasn't, I didn't enjoy it anymore. And at that moment, someone that I'd taken a class with at the Funky Little Chair forwarded me a job listing for a part time upholsterer in Brooklyn. And
Oh,
I
wow.
felt like, I had nothing to lose.
Okay.
And so I applied to that job. I started going to the upholstery shop on Fridays. So I went down to 4 days a week at my tech
Okay.
job. And within a couple of weeks, I knew that it was all I could think about. So I
Okay.
took the founder out for coffee and I said, look, I have a background in business. I really want to be an upholsterer. Make me your head of production. I'll help you grow. I'll help put systems in place that'll help your shop scale. And in exchange, I can be in this world and try to learn as much as possible.
Oh,
So that's how I got my first full time upholstery job.
okay. Ruti, one of the things that I have enjoyed so much about doing this podcast is that none of our stories are alike.
Yeah.
And so many people have started businesses because of the pandemic, but your bargaining chip, if you will, was I have these great business skills. I'm willing to help you with that as long as you let me be here and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've ever had anyone share that particular journey with me before. I think that's really unusual. And I know people go in with skills that are not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
just for creating, but that is fascinating.
Yeah, for me, it was a really good entry in because, and I know I've heard this story on your podcast so many times where people graduated with a more relevant degree than I
Mm.
had, but really people don't want to hire you if you don't have experience, but you can't get experience if you don't get hired, and you end
Right.
up in this cyclical situation, right? So I felt like for me, if I could offer something that was of
Right.
real value, then I had a better chance of finding a home in this industry that I didn't really know much about.
Right.
So that worked
So
really well for me
I
to
think
get
the
kind of
other
my
thing,
foot in the door.
okay, so I think the other thing that's fascinating is that um, you were in a tech business, which a lot of us tend to think of as not creative. But what you were doing was fairly creative because you were managing people and trying to understand the parts and the moving things and putting systems into place, which is not always considered creative. And I'm always in awe of business owners who have the creativity to be making things and the business mind to be keeping the business running really well, because not all of us do both of those things well.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'll say, which people often feel like sounds funny, but this is what I found to be true, is that actually software development and upholstery have a lot in common.
Okay.
In the sense that software development is quite a creative job in that there's so many ways you can solve something, and you have to sort of problem solve and find the one that's going to make the most sense. There's
Yes.
different considerations, of course, than upholstery, but they have that in common, and they're also both very precise. Like upholstery isn't art in the sense that there's no beautiful oops. You have to make it the correct way, and it has to fit properly, and software development is similar. So I have a very creative mind, but also a very precise mind. And those two
Mhm.
things marry really well in both of those professions, I think.
Right, right. So, just to go back for a second, when you started doing this as a hobby, had you done any sewing or upholstery or crafting or nothing?
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. I'd never sewn. I really taught myself over many, and, like many people, I would really be reticent to see my early projects now,
We all say that.
Yeah, yeah. But I was really just, pushing my way through, and I still, I'm almost 3 years into having my own shop, which I can tell you how that happened later on. But I'm still everything I do, I'm learning. And at this stage, I think I know I don't know everything, but I really feel confident that I can figure it out. So I'm not afraid to take on things that I've never done before. And I part of what I love about it, I think, is that I'm always learning and always growing and always find something new in each chair.
I do think that that's one of the things. I've had the honor of talking to so many different upholsterers as well as window treatment fabricators, and I think that's one of the distinct differences between who we are is that you are taking something apart. You don't know what you're going to find when you get inside, and you can have, but similar to window treatments, you can have 10 different wing chairs, and not one of them is going to be the same. And we might work with clients or designers and be requested to make you know panels 10 different times, but each one is going to be different. And I think, as you said, I'm always learning, because every time my designers come to me with something, it's, oh, I've never used that trim before, or I've never put that trim there before. So it's always the figuring out and the engineering parts of our jobs that I find so fascinating.
Yeah. And I love that part. Like, before I cut anything, I sit down, I draw it. I think through, like, is the fabric stretching in this direction or that direction? How much should I take off? And it was a similar process in my last career, right? Where we would like map things out and come up with a solution before we executed. So that part's really fun for me.
Okay. So let's go back to your foot got in the door. You were working 1 day a week. You take the owner to coffee. What happens next?
Okay. So I got hired at the shop as head of production, and I did that for about 3 years. And at the same time, I apprenticed on my day off, because I went there 4 days a week. On my day off, I apprenticed at another upholstery shop. So there I had no administrative responsibilities, and I was just upholstering.
Just there to learn.
Yeah. So I really tried to soak up and I learned so much, not only about upholstery, but about how to run an upholstery business. And it was a great experience. But that shop specializes in custom furniture. So people would send them architectural drawings of a sectional, and they would build it from scratch. And my heart has always been much more in restoring things that already exist in the world. And so it kind of ran its course. There wasn't anywhere else for me to go there, and they weren't planning to scale the part of the business that is interesting to me. So we kind of mutually agreed that it was time to part ways. And I really wasn't sure what my next move was going to be, but I knew that I needed like a palette cleanser or something to help me think about it. So I had met Claire Wright of Cosecha Textiles at a Cynthia class. Obviously, Cynthia brings together the best people. And she and I had become friends. The class that we were Instagram friends first. And then the class we went to, we shared an Airbnb. We rented bikes. We like gallivanted all over town, and we really bonded. She lives in Colorado. And I reached out to her as my time at the shop was winding down and asked her if she would hire me for a summer in her shop. And she graciously agreed. So I moved my family to Colorado for a summer. I put my kids in camp there. My husband worked remotely from there, and I spent a summer working in Claire's shop. And that was also just a wonderful experience to be in a different environment, more of a one-woman shop, although she does have an amazing full-time employees. It's more of a two-woman shop. And she lives right at the base of Mount Sopris. It was like beautiful and just really confidence boosting for me, because for a few months, all I did was upholster. Again, I didn't have any administrative responsibilities. And during that summer, I started poking around in the Brooklyn upholstery world to figure out what my next step would be. And I bumped into this problem that I've heard people say on your podcast before, where since I'm not a master upholsterer with 30 years of experience, shops didn't want to hire me to upholster. And they were very interested in my production management skills, but I didn't want to do that anymore.
Right.
So, after kind of realizing that that was the situation, I decided to start my own company. It's not something I ever really felt called to do, but
Okay.
I just couldn't find the thing that I wanted to exist. I don't think it existed.
Right.
So, at the end of that summer, and a really amazing experience in Claire's shop, I I rented a space in Brooklyn on FaceTime, and I dropped my kids off at school. And on their first day of school, I went and got my key and I went and checked out my new shop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did that feel like?
Um, Great, mostly. I mean, now almost 3 years in, I understand so much more what my shop is
Mm-hmm.
and what I do. And I have quite a niche, which I would love to tell you about later on.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was just, my husband and I sat down and I said, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to give myself a year and I
Which is
might,
not a lot of time for a
it's
brand new
not a lot
business.
of
I
time.
think we
It's
put a lot
not.
of pressure on ourselves, but as a young family
Yeah, we live
trying
in
to
an
build your
expensive
future,
city.
yes, yes,
And the
yes.
goal was what we agreed was it's not that in a year it had to be super profitable. It's just
Okay.
that in a year I needed to have a better understanding. Is this viable or not?
Okay. All right.
And
And
that
I think
felt,
that's reasonable.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
All right.
That felt really reasonable to me. So the first couple of weeks, I was really just, I bought a compressor, I bought a staple gun, I started buying industrial machines. I got a few clients, friends of friends, and I was saying yes to everything. I patched some cushions, I
Right.
repaired some leather seams, I worked with vinyl. No, I don't do any of that stuff anymore.
Okay.
And pretty quickly, actually, word of mouth started happening. I am
Hmm.
not a marketer.
Okay.
That is not my strength. So I really wasn't putting myself out there in any proactive way. Um, but at least in New York City, or what I've found, and I wonder if this is true across the country, there are just fewer and fewer upholsterers. And I at least live in a place where there's a real resurgence of interest in not throwing
Right.
things away. So I
Right.
became busy really fast, way faster than I expected.
Okay. So I want to backtrack for a second. You were working in one upholstery shop and you were apprenticing in another. And I think one of the differences I've seen in the two parts of our industry is that it took a really long time for the upholstery industry to be more welcoming and sharing to new people. And I think I bring it up, I think it's much less of a problem right now. But I also think the decades of that being the truth is what has created the exact situation you're talking about. And that is that there are not as many people stepping into this industry because a lot of people were holding it close and not sharing, and then they were dying at their tables and not being able to pass it on. So I think, first of all, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to people like Cynthia who made
Absolutely.
it so easy to welcome people and to share and to say that by lighting your candle, mine does not dim whatsoever. But you are in a very densely packed area of the country. And this is funny because I was just having a conversation with my daughter, who is like my older daughter. She's like the consummate thrifter, and she's gotten so great at repurposing and reusing things. And we were talking about the fact that the cost of she loves old homes and demolishing buildings is so expensive, and that in some places they've really perfected, like, okay, you can demolish this building, but here are the taxes it's going to be, here's what it's going to cost to haul everything away. So and Europe, I think this is especially prevalent. There's nowhere to go with the stuff that you knock down, so fix what's here, make it better, make it more usable. And I think that there is a huge resurgence of that. And in a densely packed area like yours, where it's not easy to just throw something out at the curb and or throw it in the trash because where is that going? I think people are taking the time to say, is there another way for me to use this? Is this,
Yeah.
and is it worth saving? There are absolutely pieces that are going to cost you 3 times as much to upholster as you ever paid for them. And the frame may not last long enough to make it worth it.
Absolutely. And I try to be honest about that if I
Yeah.
don't think it's worthwhile.
However, there are thousands and thousands of beautiful pieces just sitting in people's garages and basements and that could be brought back to life and not taking up empty space, but being used and loved.
And you know
And I
what's funny
love
is
that.
that in New York City, we don't have garages and basements. So we all live in small spaces. So
Right.
actually, what I found is that this is typically people's main seating area that they're using.
Okay.
And they either need a new one or they need this one to work for them. Like we
Okay.
in New York City, we don't have a piece of furniture that doesn't get sat on, you know?
You're right. You can't just have pretty pieces sitting so that as people
Mm-mm.
walk in your front door, this is my pretty room.
No.
Right,
And so
right.
I kind of quickly recognized that there was a pattern happening in the people who were coming to me that felt like a part of the market that wasn't being addressed. And
Okay.
that is, a lot of upholstery shops, including the one where I worked for the years prior, are to the trade, meaning that you have to have hired a designer or an
Right.
architect or a contractor to access their services. And typically, that is a pretty affluent population.
Mhm.
And a designer really knows what they're going for. So, we would more, if we did reupholstery at all, we would get requests like, we've ordered these chairs from Cherish. This is our spec fabric. Here's our spec trim, quote.
Mhm.
And first of all, that's so much less fun to me because I want
Okay.
to be a part of the design process. I
Okay.
have a point of view and I have a style, and I like
Mhm.
to collaborate and make things really joyful and fun.
Okay.
But also, there are all these regular people everywhere, probably, but I know my market best in Brooklyn, who are not redoing their whole homes and have not hired a designer, but they have a sofa or a chair that was their grandma's, or they thrifted it, or for some reason it's meaningful to them.
Okay.
And first of all, they can't access a lot of these upholstery shops that might help them. But even if they can, often they're told, like, bring me fabric, bring me the chair, I will upholster.
Right.
And they don't even know where to begin looking for fabric. And they feel
Right.
so intimidated by the process, and they don't feel comfortable spending thousands of dollars on an interaction that is so high level.
Right.
And so my niche is that I work with regular folks. I am not to the trade, and I really don't work with a lot of tradespeople. I have a
Okay.
huge amount of fabric in my shop that is vibrant and colorful and joyful and fun, but also really durable and practical.
Okay.
And I hold people's hands through the process. So I help them find the right fabric for their lifestyle and their budget and their piece. And I answer all of their questions. I answer my phone. I answer my emails. I give people time and space to make the right decision. I try to be really clear about expectations on time, when it's going to come to me, how long it's going to take to get done. And I
Right.
try to make it fun and
Okay.
easy and joyful to keep something in their life instead of stressful and esoteric and sort of disappointing.
And spending thousands of dollars to rejuvenate a piece of furniture that you already own, while a legitimate expense, should feel joyful. Because
Yeah.
if I'm going to spend that much money, I'd like to be enjoying it. And the
Yes.
process is part of that enjoyment. I love
Yes.
that idea.
Yes. I totally agree. And oftentimes, because of the expense, oftentimes the things that people are choosing to reupholster with me are sentimental to them.
Yes.
So it's really important to them that when they get back their grandma Betty's chair, that it's going to feel representative of her, still fit
Right.
into the home and not feel like a regrettable choice.
Right. Right. So as someone who works to the trade, I get to be, I see your face light up when you're talking about like helping them choose things and holding their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to do that with the designers that I work with. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that because they know I don't have to like the colors or the room or the pieces, but I do get to enjoy what pieces, what fabrics we're going to put together and how we're going to do that. So
Absolutely.
that's enjoyable for me, helping people actually pick colors and
Mm-hmm.
not my, that is not my happy place. I'm not good at it and I
Mm-hmm.
don't like it. So, but I do understand that feeling of working with someone to make them, to help them get to a point where they're happy with this decision and they're going to be in a room that they love or sitting in a piece of furniture that they love.
Yeah.
I
I
just think
mean,
that's so wonderful.
we're lucky that we have all these different types of people, right? So that some people like working with designers and other, there's someone for everyone. But,
Yes.
the designers that you're working with, they're doing the job that I'm describing, right? Like they're
Yes.
narrowing it down with you. But at the end of the day, their job is to pull the style out of the client and make sure the client and I just love doing that part directly.
I think that's wonderful. And I love that that gets to be part of your business. One of the things that I find challenging for all of us as business owners is that what we do takes our time. It takes years now that you've been learning this. So you mentioned setting expectations, and you're also big on business processes and systems. So I'm very curious, do you have a system that you walk people through? What do you do with your clients?
So typically how it works is that folks will email me pictures and measurements of whatever piece we're talking about, and I send them back an estimate. Once we have a verbal agreement on an estimate, I send them a calendar link. They choose a 30 to 45-minute slot on my calendar, which I have blocked off like certain days of the week to come in and look at fabrics together. Beforehand, I ask for some information. Like, can I see some pictures of your home? What colors are you thinking about bringing in? I ask about lifestyle. Do you have kids? Do you have pets? Are you eating on this surface? What's the rough budget we're trying to stay within? Are you a texture person, pattern person, solids person?
Great questions.
But once they come in, I already sort of have a picture. So that helps me keep it to the half hour, right? I know what I'm about to discuss.
Okay.
And I help the clients narrow it down to, let's say, 10 things they are really excited about. I have this system in my shop where I have thousands of samples and they're organized either by color or by price point or whatever. And I understand my system, so I can easily. So what I say to them is, we're going to start to just get a sense of what you like. And then I'm going to pull more things once I get a sense of what you're gravitating towards. Right now, you're just going with your gut. What do you like? Then I'm going to help you narrow it down so that it fits into all the things we talked about: kids, pets, budget, durability, etc. After you leave, I'm going to send you the list of fabrics that you've chosen, how much they cost, and those samples will arrive at your home. So I actually order them, the physical samples. And then I tell them one of three things might happen. You might say, this, I love this, I'm done, I want to do the whole chair in this. Great. You may say, I love this, but I want to do a contrast piping, or I want to do the outside in a solid. And at that point, you don't need to come back. I can send you remotely those options because I have the sample, you have the sample. Or you might say, I think I lost my mind that day. I don't like any of these things. And that's also perfectly fine. Just give me some feedback. Like, these are my favorites, but they're not quite right, whatever. Usually one of the first two things happens, I would say 90% of the time. And it's a pretty easy exchange. People get their samples, they choose something. Sometimes I need to send them contrast options and we move forward. Occasionally, I don't get it right on the first go and we keep going. I don't currently charge a design fee or anything like that. I really want it to feel like the right choice for people, so I don't want them to feel pressured or rushed. I think maybe if I had more of a problem where it was often dragging out, I would reconsider that. But I just haven't. Most of the time it's been quick and easy.
I was going to say, because you have this down to a good process, you're eliminating time by having this process in place.
And then once they've chosen fabric, I make sure that I ask all those questions that sometimes people wish an upholsterer was asking, like, this is the direction, this is the center point, like any other design choices that I'm making, I clear with the client in advance.
I love that. I mean, I think that business processes help us to be creative and help us to be profitable. But again, clear expectations, like you said, this is the direction. I mean, how many times have we made assumptions about things and that's not what our clients were assuming? So that's fantastic. Okay, so are you working by yourself? Do you have anyone working with you?
I have a few part-time employees, which is wonderful. I was by myself for the first year or so, and it was lonely. And I really like people, and I like running things by people, and I don't always get everything right. And it's nice to have people double check me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have three. In New York, I'm very lucky that there's a lot of people who live here and try to hodgepodge together different jobs to make a living.
Right, right.
Artists, creatives. So I have three women who work part-time in my shop. One just sews. So I cut
Okay.
everything and we walk through it together and she'll serge and sew it. She doesn't do all of
Okay.
my sewing because there's so much sewing. I sew a lot too.
Yeah.
But she's very helpful. I have one who does all my tear back and sometimes also cuts foam.
Okay.
And then I have one who's a little bit more administrative. So she sends all of the samples physically to my clients' homes and sends them the pricing.
Fantastic.
The way
Okay.
I came up with that is I basically sat down and made a list of all the things I don't like to do.
I love that.
And then I made them into job descriptions.
Okay. And I think, Ruti, when I have spoken with people who have part-time employees, having one person that you depend on to do a certain task or a certain part of a job means that if something happens and they can't come to work, the whole thing comes to a screeching halt. Just like if we're the only ones in our business doing anything, we
Yeah.
can't do it, it comes to a halt. So are they overlapping? Are they coming on different days? Like, how is that working in your space?
Yeah. So I have a pretty small space.
Mm-hmm.
New York City real estate is a real buzzkill. Sometimes two will overlap. Everyone likes each other. So I think everyone really
Okay,
enjoys seeing each
good.
other, you know? And I, in general, when I'm hiring, and I've always been this way, I will hire someone who's nice to be around and less skilled over a person who's more skilled but prickly any
Yeah,
day. Like
yeah.
it's a small space, it's an intimate setting. um, so sometimes they overlap, probably not all three, but like two will overlap. But everyone has a different thing that they're working on. And
Okay.
honestly, everything that they're working on, I can do.
Okay.
So if they're sick or they don't come or whatever, I just step in. The only person that I think would grind the business to a halt if they stopped coming in is me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's actually really good. So you have gone from working in tech to now to learning upholstery and doing it to now running a business. Do you ever think about quitting?
No. In fact, I've never, until now, I never felt like my profession was aligned with my soul and like who I am and what I'm
Okay.
meant to be doing. And I feel that way so much now that if I was presented with a challenge like, oh, you have to quit because you don't make enough money or something like that, I would sacrifice a lot of other things first. I would
Okay.
leave the city. I really would be flexible to keep
Okay.
this. This is
Okay.
that important to me.
Okay. I love that. So one of the questions I often ask is if you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing? And it doesn't sound like that's an option.
Well, I'll say I am a person who really likes change
Okay.
and I'm not very risk averse.